Marcus wiped down the glass display cases in the art gallery, humming softly to himself. It was late in the evening, and most of the staff had already gone home. The gallery was quiet, with only the faint hum of the air conditioning breaking the silence. For Marcus, this was his favorite time of the day. Once the gallery was empty, he could focus on what he loved most, sketching. In the corner of the janitor's closet, under stacks of old newspapers and cleaning supplies, Marcus kept a small sketchpad and a set of worn-out pencils. Every break he got, he would sneak into the closet, sit on a makeshift stool, and pour his thoughts onto paper. His sketches were raw, filled with emotion. Pictures of cityscapes, abstract forms, and faces that seemed to hold untold stories. Marcus wasn't just drawing for fun. For him, art was a way to escape the harshness of his life. Growing up, he had always dreamed of being an artist, but life had other plans. His family struggled financially, and Marcus had to leave school early to work and support them. Over the years, his dream faded, replaced by the hard reality of making ends meet. But even though he worked as a janitor, his heart still longed for the colors, shapes, and emotions that only art could provide. One afternoon, Marcus was sitting in the corner of the gallery during his break, sketching quietly. He had chosen a hidden spot behind a large sculpture where he thought no one would see him. Lost in his work, he didn't notice someone walking up behind him. "Is that your drawing?" a soft voice asked. Startled, Marcus looked up to see Claire, the young gallery intern. She was holding a stack of papers but had stopped in her tracks, her eyes fixed on the sketch Marcus was working on. "Oh, yeah," Marcus said, quickly closing his sketchpad and tucking it under his arm. "Just something I do for fun." Claire tilted her head, a curious smile spreading across her face. "That's amazing. You're really talented." Marcus shrugged, trying to downplay it. "It's nothing. Just a hobby." Before Claire could respond, Emily, the gallery's head curator, walked by. She glanced at Marcus with a smirk. "Don't tell me you're wasting time drawing again," she said. "Stick to cleaning. Leave the art to the professionals." Marcus felt a sting of embarrassment, but said nothing. He was used to comments like that. Emily always looked down on him, and no matter how hard he worked, she never saw him as more than a janitor. Claire, however, gave Emily a sharp look but stayed quiet. After Emily walked away, Claire turned back to Marcus. "Don't let her discourage you," she said gently. "You have something special. I can see it." Marcus gave a small, grateful smile, but deep down, he couldn't help but feel doubtful. Could someone like him, someone who spent his days mopping floors and taking out the trash, ever be taken seriously as an artist? Still, when he went home that night, he pulled out his sketchpad and started drawing again. For now, it was enough to dream. Marcus stood in front of the janitor's closet, staring at the door for a moment. He could hear the noise of people talking and laughing in the gallery outside, but inside his small space, there was peace. It was where he could escape from the world and let his mind wander. His sketchpad lay open on the makeshift table he had created with old crates, the pencil in his hand moving steadily across the page. As his pencil traced the curves of a city skyline, Marcus couldn't help but remember when he was young, full of hope and dreams. He had always been the creative one in his family. As a child, he spent hours drawing on scraps of paper, turning everyday objects into works of art. His parents, though they didn't have much, always encouraged his creativity, telling him that he could be anything he wanted if he worked hard enough. But life didn't turn out the way Marcus had hoped. When his father fell ill and couldn't work, Marcus had to leave school to help support his family. The dream of becoming a famous artist seemed to vanish, replaced by long days of hard work just to pay bills and keep food on the table. He had to put his sketchbook away for years, letting the dust collect on his dreams. Now, as a janitor in the gallery, Marcus was reminded every day of what he had lost. The gallery was filled with beautiful, expensive paintings and sculptures. The artists who created them had gone to art schools, had the right connections, and most importantly, had the money to make it happen. Marcus knew that for someone like him, someone who didn't have the right education or status, the dream of becoming a successful artist was almost impossible. Still, every time he picked up his pencil, a spark of hope would light up inside him. Maybe, just maybe, his art was worth something. He would never stop dreaming, even if he had to keep his work hidden in the shadows. One afternoon, as Marcus was scrubbing the gallery floors, he noticed Claire again. She had been stopping by the janitor's closet more often lately, asking him about his sketches and complimenting his work. Marcus felt a bit uncomfortable with the attention, but Claire seemed sincere. "I brought you something," Claire said one day, holding out a small worn notebook. "It's a collection of quotes and thoughts. I thought maybe it could inspire you." Marcus took the notebook with a smile, flipping through the pages. Some of the quotes were from famous artists, while others were from unknown people who had shared their wisdom with the world. Claire had even written a few thoughts of her own, words of encouragement for Marcus that made him feel both humbled and inspired. "I never told you, Marcus, that I believe in you," Claire said, her voice soft but confident. "You have a gift. Don't hide it away. The world deserves to see it." Marcus felt a rush of warmth inside. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. He had always kept his art to himself, afraid of rejection and judgment. But here was Claire, someone who believed in him, who saw the beauty in his work. That night, as Marcus sat in his tiny apartment, he looked at the notebook again. Claire's words echoed in his mind. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to share his art with the world. With a deep breath, Marcus opened his sketchpad and began to draw again. This time, he knew it wasn't just for himself. It was for everyone who had ever been told their dreams were impossible. The gallery was quiet that afternoon, with only a few visitors walking around, admiring the art. Marcus was busy cleaning the floors, sweeping up dust, and making sure everything looked spotless. As usual, he worked quickly, eager to finish so he could sneak in a few minutes of drawing before the day ended. Today, however, something felt different. The air seemed heavier, filled with the chatter and whispers of gallery staff. Marcus was focused on his work, trying to block it all out, but he couldn't help overhearing bits of conversation. "Can you believe Marcus is always drawing during his breaks? He should just stick to cleaning," one voice said. It was Emily, the head curator. Her voice carried over the entire room, and Marcus felt his face heat up. "He's a janitor, not an artist," another staff member added, laughing. "Why does he even bother?" Marcus kept his head down, pretending he didn't hear them, but the words stung. It wasn't the first time Emily had made fun of him. She didn't see him as more than the guy who mopped the floors and took out the trash. To her, his sketches were nothing but a waste of time. Trying to shake it off, Marcus continued with his cleaning. As he approached the back hallway, he caught sight of one of his sketches lying on the floor. He had accidentally dropped it earlier, and it must have slipped out of his pocket while he was cleaning. The sketch was one of his favorites, a scene of a busy street with people hurrying by, their faces full of expression. It captured the energy of the city, the rush of life, all in one simple drawing. Marcus knelt down to pick it up, but before he could stand, Emily appeared from around the corner. "What's this?" Emily asked, holding the sketch up with a mocking smile. "Another one of your masterpieces." Marcus stood up quickly, trying to take the sketch back. "It's just something I was working on," he said quietly, hoping to avoid any more attention. Emily laughed, holding it out of his reach. "You know, Marcus, you might want to stick to cleaning. No one here is interested in your doodles." She turned to the other staff members nearby, showing them the sketch and making them laugh. "Exhibit A, Art Fail," Emily joked loudly. "Maybe we should hang it up in the staff room." Marcus felt a rush of embarrassment flood his chest. He wanted to run away, but he stayed still, forcing himself not to show how much her words hurt. Claire, who had been walking nearby, noticed the commotion. She saw Emily holding the sketch and making fun of it. Her heart sank at the way Marcus was being treated. She had seen Marcus's art before, and she knew it was special. It was more than just lines on paper. It told stories and captured emotions. "Give that back," Claire said, stepping forward with determination. Emily looked at Claire, surprised by her boldness. "What's it to you?" Emily asked, raising an eyebrow. "I think it deserves more respect than that," Claire replied firmly, her voice steady. Emily rolled her eyes but reluctantly handed the sketch back to Marcus, who quickly tucked it under his arm. He avoided Claire's gaze, not wanting her to see how embarrassed he felt. But Claire wasn't about to let this moment pass without doing something. As Emily walked away, Claire whispered to Marcus, "Don't listen to her. Your art is important." Marcus nodded, his heart still heavy, but there was a spark of hope deep inside. For the first time, someone had stood up for him. And maybe, just maybe, his art was worth something after all. The days passed slowly for Marcus after the incident with Emily. He tried to keep his head down, focusing on his work and avoiding the other staff members. The gallery had never felt as cold and unwelcoming as it did now. Every time Marcus picked up a mop or wiped down a counter, he felt the sting of their words echoing in his mind. But there was one bright spot in his routine: Claire. She continued to visit the janitor's closet, often bringing him coffee or just a quick word of encouragement. She never made him feel small or worthless. Unlike the others, Claire had started to talk to him more, learning about his life, his struggles, and most importantly, his love for art. One afternoon, Claire knocked on the door of the janitor's closet. Marcus looked up, surprised to see her standing there with a smile on her face. "Hey, Marcus," she said, "I brought you something." Marcus stood up, wiping his hands on his apron. "You didn't have to. I'm just cleaning up." "I know," Claire replied, "but I thought you might like this." She handed him a small notebook, worn and slightly bent at the edges. "It's just a collection of thoughts and quotes. I thought maybe some of them might inspire you." Marcus took the notebook and flipped through the pages. Some of the quotes were from famous artists, but there were others from regular people who had shared their thoughts on life, dreams, and perseverance. Claire had even written a few of her own. One quote caught his eye: "Art is the voice of the soul. Don't let anyone silence it." Claire smiled softly, watching Marcus read. "I thought you might like that one. It's something my grandmother always used to say." For the first time in a long time, Marcus felt a sense of warmth inside. He had always kept his art to himself, unsure if it was good enough or if anyone would even care about it. But Claire had never treated him like he was just a janitor. She treated him like an artist, like his work mattered. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, looking up at her with a mixture of gratitude and surprise. "You really believe in me, don't you?" Claire nodded without hesitation. "I do. I've seen your work, Marcus. It's amazing. You have a real talent, and it's something the world needs to see." Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to him like that. His family had always supported him, but they couldn't help him follow his dream. And now, Claire, a stranger to him just a few months ago, was encouraging him in a way that made him believe, for the first time, that maybe his art wasn't just a dream. "I don't know if I can ever be an artist," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm just a janitor. I don't have the skills or the connections. People like me don't get a chance to succeed in the art world." Claire shook her head. "That's exactly why you should do it. Because the world needs people like you. People who have lived real lives, who see the world differently. Your art is your voice, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you it's not good enough." Marcus looked down at the notebook, at the simple, handwritten words that now seemed to carry so much meaning. Maybe Claire was right. Maybe it was time to stop hiding his art away in the shadows and start sharing it with the world. Maybe it was time to believe in himself. "Okay," Marcus said, a small smile forming on his lips. I'll try, but no promises. Claire smiled back, her eyes full of encouragement. That's all I'm asking. For the first time in a long while, Marcus felt a spark of hope. And this time, he wasn't going to let it go out. The following weeks were both exciting and difficult for Marcus. Every day, he found himself drawing more and more, pushing past the doubt that had held him back for so long. He would sneak away during his breaks, sketching in the corner of the janitor's closet or on the bench outside the gallery. It wasn't much, but it felt like he was finally doing something for himself. Each line he drew brought him closer to the artist he had always dreamed of becoming. But still, Marcus wasn't sure if his work was good enough. The art world seemed like a far-off place, full of talented people who had studied for years and had the right connections. He had none of those things. He wasn't even sure how to start getting noticed. Claire had noticed his struggle. She had seen how hard he worked, how much his art meant to him, and she didn't want him to give up. One evening, as Marcus was wiping down the gallery's windows, Claire approached him with a determined look on her face. "I did something," she said, a little out of breath. "I submitted one of your sketches to an art contest." Marcus froze. "What? You submitted my work, without asking me?" Claire smiled, holding up her hands in defense. "I know it might seem sudden, but I believe in you. I think your work deserves to be seen. It's really good, Marcus. You shouldn't hide it anymore." Marcus didn't know what to say. Part of him was nervous, terrified that the art world would laugh at his simple sketches. But part of him was also grateful. Claire had believed in him when he had trouble believing in himself. I don't know, Claire," Marcus said slowly. "I've never entered anything like this before. What if they don't like it? What if they laugh at me?" Claire gave him a reassuring smile. "What if they love it? You'll never know unless you try." Marcus stood still, unsure of what to feel. He had always kept his art hidden, afraid of rejection. But now, with Claire's encouragement, he was being pushed into the light. He didn't know what would happen, but he had to admit there was a part of him that was excited. This could be his chance. A few weeks later, Marcus received an email. He had almost forgotten about the submission, buried in his doubts and routine. When he opened it, his heart raced. The subject line read, "Congratulations. Your work has been shortlisted." Marcus blinked in disbelief. He quickly opened the email, reading the words over and over again. His drawing had been chosen to be part of an art exhibit at a prestigious gallery. It was incredible, overwhelming, and beyond anything he could have imagined. His work, the sketches he had once kept hidden away in his small apartment, was going to be seen by real artists, critics, and collectors. Claire was the first person Marcus told. He rushed to find her at the gallery, his heart pounding with excitement. When he told her the news, she grinned widely, her eyes shining with pride. "I knew it. I knew you could do it," Claire said, hugging him tightly. "This is just the beginning, Marcus. The world is about to see your art." For the first time, Marcus felt like he was finally on the path he had always dreamed of. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was an artist with a real chance to make a difference. And even though he had a long way to go, Marcus knew that with Claire's support, he could face whatever came next. The day of the exhibit finally arrived. Marcus could hardly believe it. His artwork, which had always been his secret, was now being displayed in a prestigious art gallery. It was a dream he had long given up on, but somehow here he was. His drawing, "The Weight of Tomorrow," was hanging on the wall, surrounded by paintings and sculptures created by much more famous artists. Marcus stood in the corner of the gallery, nervously watching the visitors. His heart pounded in his chest as people walked past his artwork. He couldn't help but feel like a stranger in the world of high-end galleries and expensive pieces of art. He had never been to a place like this before, and now, here he was, a janitor turned artist among professionals. He wanted to disappear, to hide in the shadows, but he also knew he had to face this moment. Claire had given him a pep talk earlier in the day. "You've earned this, Marcus. "You deserve to be here," she had said. "Don't hide. Stand tall. You're an artist now." But standing tall was easier said than done. Every time someone stopped to look at his piece, Marcus's stomach churned. He watched their faces, waiting for any sign of judgment or disinterest. He didn't know if he could take it if they didn't like it. As he stood there, trying to calm his nerves, he noticed a few people pointing at his work. One woman, a well-dressed art collector, was talking excitedly to her companion. "This one is something special," she said. "I've never seen anything like it. So raw, so emotional." Marcus blinked, surprised. He had no idea what to do with the compliment. He simply stood there, unsure if he should approach them. But before he could gather his courage, a voice behind him spoke. "Is this your work?" a man asked. Marcus turned to see a tall, well-dressed man standing beside him. His sharp suit and serious expression made him seem important. "Yes, it is," Marcus said, trying to sound confident. The man smiled, nodding slowly as he looked at the drawing. "It's incredible. It tells a story, a feeling that's hard to put into words. I'm an art dealer, and I'd like to talk to you about possibly buying your work. I think it could sell for a lot of money." Marcus's heart skipped a beat. An art dealer. He had only ever heard of such people in stories, not in his own life. Could it be true? Was his work really that good? Before Marcus could respond, the man's attention shifted to other pieces, and Marcus stood there, frozen in place. His mind was racing. He had only ever dreamed of being noticed, of having someone take his work seriously. But now, in the face of it, he wasn't sure how to react. Claire spotted him standing there, looking stunned. She rushed over, her eyes wide. "Marcus, did he say what I think he said?" Marcus nodded slowly, his mouth dry. He wants to buy my art." Claire's face lit up. "That's amazing." "This is just the beginning, Marcus. I told you, people need to see your talent." Marcus couldn't believe it. From a janitor to someone who might be paid for his art. It felt unreal. But in that moment, standing in the middle of the gallery, he realized that the life he had imagined was now within his reach. This was just the start of something much bigger than he had ever expected. The days after the gallery exhibition passed in a blur for Marcus. He was still processing everything that had happened. His artwork, which had once been hidden away in his small apartment, was now being admired by people he had only dreamed of impressing. Art collectors, critics, and artists were all talking about his piece, The Weight of Tomorrow. They saw something in it that he hadn't fully understood himself. But as exciting as it was, Marcus couldn't shake the nerves. He was still the janitor at the gallery. He still had his regular routine of sweeping floors and cleaning windows. The idea that his life could change because of a simple drawing seemed impossible. The world he had always known, the world of hard work, late nights, and struggles, felt so different from the world of fine art and high society. One afternoon, as Marcus was cleaning the gallery's back hallway, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a familiar face. It was Emily, the head curator. For a moment, he thought she might say something sarcastic or dismissive, but instead, she looked at him with something else in her eyes. Respect. "I just wanted to say, your work is incredible," she said quietly, as if unsure of what she was saying. "It was a hit at the exhibit. I didn't expect that." Marcus blinked, surprised. Emily had always been the one to make fun of his sketches, the one who dismissed him as just a janitor. He had never expected her to acknowledge his art, let alone praise it. "Thank you," Marcus said, unsure how to respond. I didn't think anyone would care." Emily shook her head. "It's not that I didn't think your work had potential. It's just, you never showed anyone. And honestly, I didn't know how much you cared about it." Marcus didn't know what to say. It felt strange to hear her speak like this, but at the same time, it felt like a kind of victory. For the first time, she was seeing him for more than just a janitor. She was seeing him as an artist. "I'm glad you liked it," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been drawing for a long time. Just never thought it would go anywhere." "You're not alone in that," Emily replied with a small smile. "But now you have something people want to see." Before Marcus could respond, Emily turned and walked away. Marcus stood there, trying to absorb what had just happened. He had always known he had a passion for art, but hearing someone like Emily, someone who had always looked down on him, say something so genuine was different. It was a validation he didn't even know he needed. Later that day, Marcus received another email. This time, it was from the art dealer who had been at the exhibit. The subject line read, "Let's talk business." Marcus's hands shook as he opened it. The email confirmed that the dealer wanted to buy several of his pieces, not just one, but a whole collection. Marcus felt a rush of emotions, excitement, disbelief, even fear. This was real. This was happening. But more than that, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time, Marcus believed in himself. The world he had always dreamed of, the world of art and creativity, was no longer out of reach. It was right in front of him, waiting for him to step into it. As Marcus stood in the gallery that evening, staring at his own artwork on the wall, he realized how far he had come. From a janitor who kept his drawings hidden to an artist whose work was being celebrated, it was more than he had ever imagined. And this was just the beginning. Marcus couldn't believe it. Just a few weeks ago, he was scrubbing floors and keeping to himself, hiding his art away from the world. Now he was standing in his small apartment, looking at the email from the art dealer once again. The dealer wanted to buy not just one of his sketches, but an entire collection of his work. It was more than Marcus had ever imagined. He had always kept his art hidden, afraid to share it with others. The fear of rejection, the worry that his work wasn't good enough, had kept him locked in a small world of self-doubt. But now, with the gallery exhibition behind him and the positive responses pouring in, Marcus felt like a different person. He could hardly sleep that night, his mind racing with all the possibilities. The dealer had offered a generous sum for his art, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about the recognition, the feeling that what he created truly mattered. People actually wanted to own pieces of his soul, pieces of the stories he had quietly painted on paper for years. The next day, Marcus walked into the gallery, his heart pounding. The staff there had all started treating him differently since the exhibition. Emily, who had once mocked him, now greeted him with a smile and even invited him to join a few of the gallery's meetings. Marcus was still getting used to it. He had spent so many years being invisible, and now it felt as though the world was paying attention to him in a way he never thought possible. As Marcus walked through the gallery that day, his gaze fell on the wall where his drawing, "The Weight of Tomorrow," was still hanging. He couldn't help but smile. It was incredible to see his work displayed alongside the paintings of famous artists. It was a dream he thought he had lost long ago, but now it was reality. Later that afternoon, Marcus met with the art dealer. They sat down at a small cafe, and the dealer spoke about his plans to promote Marcus's work, showing it to collectors all over the world. It was all happening so quickly, and Marcus wasn't sure if he was ready for the whirlwind of change that was coming. But he knew one thing. He couldn't go back to the way things were before. He couldn't go back to being just the janitor, hiding his art in the shadows. "You're going to make a name for yourself," the art dealer said, his voice confident. "People are going to want to know who you are. And your art will inspire a lot of people." The words filled Marcus with a sense of pride and excitement. He had spent so many years doubting himself, thinking that his dreams were too big, too impossible. But now it felt like everything was finally falling into place. As Marcus walked home that evening, he thought about how far he had come. He remembered the days when he kept his art hidden from the world, afraid to share it. He remembered the times when Emily and others made fun of him, telling him he would never be anything more than a janitor. But now he was about to step into a new world, a world where his art mattered, where he mattered. The future was uncertain, and Marcus knew there would be challenges ahead. But for the first time, he felt ready. He wasn't just the janitor anymore. He was an artist, and his journey was only beginning. Marcus stood in front of the large, clean canvas, his brush in hand. The gallery had asked him to create a new piece, something fresh that reflected the journey he had taken. He had already sold several of his earlier works, but this piece was different. This would be the one that showed the world just how far he had come, how much he had grown. It had been a whirlwind of a few months. Marcus's life had changed in ways he never thought possible. His art, once hidden away in the corners of his mind and his apartment, was now being celebrated. He had been invited to shows, featured in art magazines, and even received messages from aspiring artists who looked up to him. Marcus had gone from being a janitor at the gallery to one of its featured artists. The transformation was overwhelming, and yet he felt more like himself than ever before. As he painted, his mind drifted back to the beginning of it all. The day when Emily had first mocked his work and called it just doodles. He remembered how small and invisible he had felt, how afraid he had been to put his art out there. But now he saw everything differently. He understood that the rejection, the doubt, and the struggles had only made him stronger. The first time he sold a painting, the rush of excitement had been like nothing he had ever experienced. The gallery staff had congratulated him, and even Emily had said something kind. He had never expected her to recognize his talent, but she did. That was when it finally hit him. The world didn't care where he came from, or whether he had been a janitor. All that mattered was the art. Now, as Marcus continued painting, he thought about the people who had helped him along the way. Claire, who had believed in him when he had doubts. She had pushed him to take the risk, to submit his work, and to believe in himself. Without her, Marcus knew he might have stayed stuck in his old routine, hiding his true passion behind a mop and a broom. But there was more to his story than just personal success. Marcus had always wanted to make a difference, to use his art for something greater than fame or money. With his newfound success, he had started a program for young, aspiring artists, especially those from underprivileged backgrounds. He had visited schools, shared his story, and offered scholarships for students who couldn't afford art supplies. Marcus knew how hard it was to follow a dream without the right resources, and he didn't want others to face the same struggles he had. As Marcus stepped back from his canvas, he smiled. The painting was complete. It was bold and full of emotion, capturing the essence of everything he had been through. The brushstrokes were wild, yet controlled, a perfect reflection of his journey from doubt to belief, from hiding his art to sharing it with the world. The phone buzzed in his pocket. It was an invitation to another show, this time in a bigger city. As much as he had accomplished, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. He had a long way to go, and the world had yet to see all that he had to offer. He looked at the painting once more, proud of what he had achieved. His work had not only changed his life, but it had also opened doors for others, showing them that no matter where they came from, they could achieve greatness too. Marcus wasn't just an artist anymore. He was a mentor, a dreamer, and someone who had found his place in the world. And this was just the start of his legacy.